Moving on, I think we shall now go to our fourth collage, which got me down the memory lane. When I was about 2 years or 3 years old, mom and I used to play a game before going to sleep. She used to say that we need to close our eyes and remember every happy moment about the day. And I was such a sincere little kid that I would think of every minute and ran to her, whilst which mom would be fast asleep. So, and then suddenly I realized I'm getting no replies from her, and I'll be like, Ma, idu kele, I'm just entering school. And she would be like, Ritu, I finished my whole day and I'm already asleep, and I'm halfway into my dream. How this active girl that was inside me used to believe my mom so diligently and say, oh my God, mom is so fast. And I think she is my inspiration to finish such a beautiful day in such a short time. Those were the days, weren't it, when our world revolved around our parents. And as a child, I think I used to think that my brain was a porridge made by the ingredients of my mom's music. You know, she used to sing lullabies that only I can listen to, and nobody else around would fall asleep except me, because it was a personal favorite. And also the places she took me to, and the words that she had built and woven into my brain. That's what mom means to me, and this collage is going to make me reminisce her absence that I'm caught in the hostel. And to all the girls here who miss their parents, we dedicate this collage. Over to you, Gopika.
Thank you so much, Gopika. It's another beautiful song, and I'm sure everyone would agree with me that it was a beautiful reminiscence along with Gopika's Golden Strings once again today. So to Ritu, it was, about her memories shared with her mom. And to me, I'm going to, yes, I mean, I love my dad for whatever he's given to me. And of course, I attribute whatever I write and speak to my mom. But then this poem is dedicated to the most beautiful bundle of joy that I've ever held in my hands. And that bundle was named Aradhna. So she's out there at my sister's place listening to this, and this is dedicated to you, Arakuti. And what is more beautiful about Ara is that she's let me play the role of a parent, and she's played the role of a parent as well at times for me. And so I have two poems here. The first one, titled A Journey Without Ara. So let me take a few seconds to present the screen. So this was one of the very first few times after she was grown and we used to communicate a lot. And I had to go as an examiner to Salem, and I took the overnight train. I'd ensured that I'd take the train that leaves the last and then reaches the earliest the next day. Yet I got into the train and then felt so heavy, and then I wrote down this poem, A Journey Without Ara. As the train snorts aloud and departs, oblivious to the teary eyes and heavy hearts, I keep the lights on, not one, but two, yellow, but makes me feel blue. And here I am, desperately trying to smell your hair, empathize your fear, touch your palm, cup your face so calm, chuckle at that soft snores, remind you of the pending chores, read tales to nurture, make promises for the future. But alas, only to realize, alone, without you out of my sight, I am a mom with no might. With those cuddles and kicks, night after night, it was you who gifted me a sleep so tight. Thank you, Arakuti. And this was on a day of rains and dysmenorrhea. Probably, I think, we need to think about this. If rain and dysmenorrhea helps me write better. So, this is one of those few days when Ara gracefully steps into the role of a parent or a caretaker. Ara, could you please? That's how I titled this poem. Ara, could you please double check the lock? Okay, thank you. Ara, could you please double check the locked doors, shut the stove and settle the dishes, soak the grains and sort the clothes, prepare the bags and plug the gadgets, draw the curtains and dim the lights, spread the sheets and switch on the music, press those feet that plead to be pain-free, pat my back and point out greener pastures, peck my forehead with hopeful promises. Help me close my eyelids that scuffle the dark and gently open my mind to a dream that screams beautiful, healthy, and happy tomorrows. Love you, Arakuti. Over to you, Madhu, with whom I'm beautifully enjoying this roller coaster ride presently.
Those are the words of a mom, Pratibha. But then the thing is, you're not the only mom. You have someone for a competition. Just give me a minute to show who it is. Yeah, the one sitting is the competition I was talking about. So, which is the female tiger, and the one standing is her, I think, 16-month-old son. You can see that he's sort of stressed because he's just few weeks away. When this picture was shot, he's just few weeks away from parting his mom. So let's take a look at what a tiger mom does and see where parenting goes on. As per the books, the bond between a mother and a child is pretty much the strongest bond that nature has ever created. Actually, love itself comes a few notches less than the bond between a mother and its child. So what happens is a tigress gives birth generally to 3 litters, sometimes two, sometimes four, but generally it's 3 litters. And for the first 6 months, the mother is really panicky about things because generally what happens is female tigers live inside the territory of a male. Generally, a male controls 3 females, and the only thing that the male does is gives access to his country, I mean, hunting grounds for the female. So he never actually hunts or takes active part in parenting. So every single tiger is a single mom. Just like you, Pratibha. And if we know how it is to raise a child alone, a tiger does it with 3 children all at the same time. So what happens is there's another life-threatening situation there for a tiger because when a tigress is with cubs, generally males from other territories cross through the territory of a tigress, and what they first try to do is kill the cubs of the mother because a female tiger with her cubs is not ready to mate with that male. So the only chance that the male gets to mate with the female is by killing her cubs. So what she does is she keeps changing from one cave to the other for full 6 months, and that's in between, finding new territory and hiding her cubs and stuff like that. Since she is really busy doing all these things, she loses a lot of weight by moving around, not finding too much time to hunt and feeding the cubs her milk, and which is like day in and day out. And in 6 months, the cubs are almost added. The cubs are almost 3 times their weight as they were born, sometimes even more. And past that, what happens is the mother slowly stops lactating her kids, and she takes them for hunting and stuff like that. See, there is a reason why tigers are the apex predators and not lions. One reason is lions hunt in packs. Only the females hunt, mostly at least, and they hunt in packs. But a tiger is a solitary hunter. There has been no records of tigers hunting as a pack or as a group. So that is one thing. And generally, we all know that tiger hunts deer, monkeys, langurs, and sometimes peacocks. But then for a mother with 3 cubs, definitely none of that is going to be anywhere close to sufficient. So she's forced to go for bigger prey like a sambar deer, which is pretty much bigger than a full-grown buffalo if you want to scale it, for the ones who haven't met a sambar deer. And sometimes she gets too desperate and takes down a full-grown bison head-on. A bison is easily somewhere between 2 to 3 tons, and some of the male bison are about 5 tons. And she hunts them single-handedly and drags the carcass all the way to her den, and then she feeds her young ones. So you can see that the cub in the picture has almost grown to the size of its mom in less than a year and a half. So now comes the soap opera part. When the male gets to about 18 months, he's the first one to be sent out. And this might seem brutal, but then in nature, everything has a reason and a purpose to it. What happens is once the male cubs grow to a certain age and to a certain size, the dad of the cub becomes threatened, because it is generally the son who ends up dethroning the father's reign and sometimes killing the father. So the father wants to put a check on that, and the mother knows that, and the mother slowly tries to push him away. And the son, for his part, knows that he's the one who's to be chucked out first because the girls are going to stay for a bit longer, at least somewhere between 4 to 6 months. And then what he does is he tries to extend his stay with mom, and he comes near mom, cuddles a lot around, but then the mom keeps pushing him. And one fine day, the mom says, "This is it," and parts from it. And then, at least for the next 2 3 days, the son follows mom at a distance of about 15 to 20 feet, and the mom keeps chasing him. So this might feel a little brutal, but then I think one part of parenting, as much as it is to hang on to them, is to make way and part from them when the time comes. I think nowadays we are seeing a lot of overprotective parents, and if at all there is one thing that we need to learn from tigers, it's to uh, say enough when it is enough. Back to you, Ritu.
Thank you so much, sir. I think what a charming little collage it was. Thank you for fulfilling my dream. Gopika, I think you gave a perfect start to my story with a lullaby-like song. And ma'am, Ara has always been the bundle of joy that I have found in Neverland. And you gave me, a clear